Lucky Luciano, from street gangster to mafia kingpin. In the shadows of New York City's bustling streets during the early 1900s, a young immigrant rose from petty street hustler to the architect of organized crime in America. His name was Charles Lucky Luciano, the man who turned the mafia from warring street gangs into a powerful criminal empire. But Luciano's story is not just one of crime. It's a story of ambition, betrayal, power, and survival. This is the tale of how one street gangster became the undisputed mafia kingpin of the United States. Early life, the immigrant streets. Charles Luciano was born Salvatore Lucania in 1897 in Sicily. Like many Italian immigrants of the time, his family moved to America seeking opportunity, settling in the tough neighborhoods of New York's Lower East Side. But life in the Five Points district was anything but opportunity. It was survival. Gangs ruled the streets, poverty was widespread, and children grew up fast. Luciano quickly discovered that fighting, intimidation, and quick thinking were the tools of survival. By his teenage years, Luciano was already running with gangs, shaking down kids for lunch money and controlling small corners of the block. It wasn't long before he crossed paths with two young men who would shape his destiny: Meyer Lansky, a Jewish immigrant with a genius for numbers, and Bugsy Siegel, a hot-tempered but fearless fighter. Together, they would form the foundation of what would later become the American Mafia, the rise of a street hustler. In the 1920s, prohibition hit America like a tidal wave. Alcohol was outlawed, but demand never disappeared. In fact, demand skyrocketed, and with it, opportunities for profit. Luciano saw what others didn't. Instead of small rackets and petty crimes, the real money was in bootlegging, importing, producing, and distributing alcohol. With Lansky handling the finances and Siegel managing muscle, Luciano built connections to powerful Italian and Jewish gangs. But Luciano's true genius wasn't just business. He understood diplomacy. While other mobsters fought each other for scraps of territory, Luciano built alliances. He realized the future of organized crime wasn't in endless gang wars, it was in cooperation and structure. The Castellamar's War. By the late 1920s, two powerful mafia bosses dominated New York: Joe Masseria, known as Joe the Boss, and Salvatore Maranzano. Their battle for control of the mafia erupted into what became known as the Castellamar's War, a bloody struggle that claimed dozens of lives. Luciano initially sided with Masseria, but he was quietly playing both sides. He knew endless violence only weakened the mafia and attracted unwanted attention from police. Luciano wanted something bigger, an organized system that brought peace and profits. In 1931, Luciano made his move. He betrayed his boss, Masseria, orchestrating his assassination in a Coney Island restaurant. Weeks later, he did the same to Maranzano, eliminating both rival leaders. With both men gone, Luciano emerged as the undisputed boss of bosses. But instead of ruling like a dictator, he did something revolutionary: the creation of the Commission. Luciano realized that no single boss should control everything because it only led to jealousy, betrayal, and bloodshed. So he created the Commission, a governing council of mafia families across the country. The Commission was like a board of directors for organized crime. Each mafia family had a seat at the table, and disputes were settled through discussion rather than violence. It was a groundbreaking system that allowed the mafia to grow into a nationwide empire, stretching from New York to Chicago, from Detroit to Los Angeles. This was Luciano's legacy, turning the mafia into a modern, structured organization. Expansion of the empire. Under Luciano's leadership, organized crime spread its tentacles everywhere. Prohibition remained the mafia's cash cow, bootlegging made fortunes. But Luciano wasn't content with alcohol alone. The mafia moved into gambling, prostitution, and labor racketeering. Luciano had a reputation for being ruthless but practical. If there was money to be made, he wanted in. He also maintained his powerful alliances with Jewish mobsters like Lansky and Siegel, proving that money came before old ethnic rivalries. This multi-ethnic underworld partnership made the mafia even stronger. By the mid-1930s, Luciano was at the height of his power. Newspapers called him the boss of bosses, though he preferred the title of simply being first among equals. The downfall, Thomas Dewey strikes back. But power attracts attention and enemies. One of Luciano's fiercest opponents was Thomas E. Dewey, a relentless prosecutor determined to bring down organized crime. Dewey saw an opportunity in Luciano's prostitution rackets. In 1936, Luciano was arrested and charged with running one of the largest prostitution operations in the country. Despite his protests of innocence, he was convicted and sentenced to 30 to 50 years in prison. For many, this seemed like the end of Lucky Luciano. The great kingpin was finally behind bars. But even in prison, Luciano's influence didn't disappear. World War II, Operation Underworld. When World War II broke out, the U.S. government faced a serious problem. German saboteurs were threatening America's ports and shipping lanes. The Navy needed help securing New York's docks, and surprisingly, they turned to Lucky Luciano. Through his Mafia connections, Luciano ensured protection of the docks and provided intelligence from Sicily once the Allies invaded Italy. In exchange, his prison sentence was reduced. In 1946, Luciano was released but immediately deported back to Italy. Life in exile. From Italy, Luciano tried to rebuild his empire. He dabbled in heroin trafficking and even attempted to control the growing casino business in Cuba. At one point, a legendary mob summit was held in Havana, where Luciano hoped to reassert his authority. But U.S. pressure forced the Cuban government to expel him, and his influence steadily declined. Still, even in exile, he remained a figure of respect to the architect who had built the modern mafia. The end of an era. On January 26, 1962, Lucky Luciano died of a heart attack at the Naples airport. Ironically, he was waiting to meet with film producers about a movie based on his life. His funeral in Naples was attended by hundreds, but in America, his name lived on in whispers as the man who had transformed organized crime forever. Legacy: the father of modern organized crime. Luciano's true legacy isn't in the rackets he ran or the money he made. It's in the system he created. By forming the Commission, by building alliances, and by turning disorganized gangs into a national syndicate, Luciano laid the blueprint for organized crime that endured for decades. He was ruthless, cunning, and often merciless. But he was also a visionary who saw beyond the streets of New York and built an empire from the shadows. From a Sicilian immigrant boy hustling on the Lower East Side to the Mafia's most influential figure, Lucky Luciano's journey is the story of how crime, power, and ambition shaped the underworld of America. He was not just a gangster. He was the kingpin who wrote the rules of the modern Mafia. So, what do you think? Was Lucky Luciano a criminal mastermind who corrupted America, or a visionary who gave the Mafia order and structure? And as always, let us know in the comments which mobster you'd like us to cover next.